Hello and welcome back to the 100 Jobs Project. I am your host, Katie Monson-Gant, and I am so excited about today's guest. We're talking to Tatiana, who lives a dual life as a sales development manager by day, a romantasy author by night, and a mom all the time. So really excited to hear all about how you manage these things, and welcome to the show, Tatiana.
Super excited. I'm like, that was a great intro. So very excited to chat.
Let's get to know you a little bit. I like to just do a couple quick cues with everyone who comes on the show so that, I get to know you, they get to know you.
Let's bring this on. I'm like, well, what is these questions?
Really heavy hitters. Morning person or night person?
Morning person by design, night person by need. So I would say I still enjoy mornings, wake up still early, but I stay up way too late.
Now, are you still doing a lot of work in the evenings usually, or are you just hanging out with your kids?
It's usually both, right? Usually I wake up, I go to work, then in the evenings is where, kid time comes in, it's my book time comes in, it's my me time comes in. So usually, once kids go to bed, that's me time, which I enjoy.
It's so nice to be awake and up and ready before the whole world is getting on with their day, but also nighttime is where it's happening a lot of the time.
So yeah, I get to do both a little bit.
We're coming into a time of year where there's a lot of treats around. Are you more of a fruity or a chocolatey dessert person?
Chocolatey, 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a carbs addict. I eat, probably not healthy, but I eat sugary treats, candies every day, to be honest.
Right. It's if I could be an alcoholic or I could have a cookie every day.
That's what I'm saying, and at this point, I'm I've trained my body to process the sugar very efficiently.
Okay, side note on that. You're in Utah, right?
Yeah.
Have you been out to the Ballerina Farm stand?
I have not, no, but I've heard people talking about it a lot, so.
So my in-laws are in Utah and we went out to visit in October, and Mark and I spent a day away. We did a little Park City, evening. It was very nice. And then on our way back the next day, we stopped at the Ballerina Farm stand, and she makes this chocolate mousse that is the richest, most decadent, unique chocolate mousse I've ever had in my life. So if you're a chocolate person, add that on your list, make a day of it.
That sounds great. So we'll give you something to do this holiday break.
I did mention briefly that you are an author. I have to know what you're reading right now, or if you have any books on your list for the new year.
It's kind of weird because I kind of read everything, to be honest. It goes in phases. And then there's usually an audiobook, and then there's the, actual book, and then there's the Kindle book. So there's usually at any point, there's 3 different books, depending on the mood. I'm a mood reader. So right now, one that kind of kept my attention is Sorcerers to the Crown. It's an old book. I don't know if I've been deep diving into older, less known books. Really cool concept. Very interesting story. So that's kind of been pulling my attention. There's one that I read recently that, again, I just stumbled on Libby one day, 5-star read for me. Also, I have not heard it before, but it's the Genie and the Golem. And it's kind of a historical, magical fiction standalone between Yiddish culture and also Syrian little village, the 1800s, 1900s New York. So it was a really cool book. I was that was definitely my most recent 5 stars. But trying to think, all the TBRs, usually when I draft, I have very little time to read books. So usually that's the time where I go and, listen to maybe some biographies. Quicksilver, that's been on my TBR for the longest time. And I'm this is going to happen this week, hopefully this week, maybe. We'll see how it goes. But
if you've got a little time off, hopefully.
I know. I'm now that my book is with beta readers right now. So I'm kind of don't know what to do with all this free time. So we'll catch up on all the reading, hopefully next week or 2.
Love a hidden gem. So thank you for some of those recos. One more thing before I forget. This is one of our most important elements of the show. I've got to know what is in your work bag or at your workspace.
I'm hey, here's on my desk already proof. I don't have my work bag right next to me, but I'll tell you, I'll have usual lip gloss. My bag, in fact, I have a terrible habit of picking out lip glosses and then leaving them in my bag. And then I have to grab more because, for that day I want a different one. So at one point I have to dump like 20 lip glosses out of my bag, put them back into my makeup drawer, and then like, so yes, definitely a lot of lip
Any
glosses.
favorite brands or standout shades?
No, so I don't, honestly, again, this might sound terrible for some people, but I'm a drugstore girl. I do occasionally like to do Ipsy bags, so I'll get some new ones to try. I usually like more of the shimmery, clear. Usually I'll have my headphones. I don't go without my headphones anywhere. Typically, either, like I said, I never know when I'll get a little overstimulated by the sounds outside and like to just tune them out. And then I also get very strongly inspired by music overall. So a lot of my, I don't know if coping mechanisms is the right word, but a lot of my emotion processing goes through music. So if I feel sad, I'll listen to music. If I feel very excited, there's music. If I feel determined, there's music. So I would say for another couple things is honestly just typical girly things. Like I'll have a nail file. I like to do my own nails with just like a press-on nail from Walmart. Again, very DIY here, usually a piece of gum or like some kind of mint because I talk to people at work. So I like to make sure that's taken care of. And then I'll say water or water bottle or some kind of drink is definitely my go-to, or Diet Pepsi, to be honest.
Oh.
There's going to be a piece of candy in my bag at any point.
Honestly, I love that you've got some Walmart stuff in there. Walmart is an underrated gem.
You got everything. And honestly, they've been stepping up their quality, Ella.
They have. I listened to a podcast once years ago. I want to say it was like a How I Built This episode with Eileen Fisher. She did a collab with them a while ago. And one of the things they asked her was like, hey, well, you were this designer known for having high quality. Like, why did you feel comfortable partnering with Walmart? And she said, at first I didn't. But once they got into things, she said, I realized just like how much Walmart actually buys. She said that they were able to source like really premium, good quality fabrics just for so cheap purely because of the scale. And that was one thing that like really shifted my perspective of Walmart. And now, of course, we've had like different friends and family members work for Walmart and getting to like see a little behind the scenes there. But Walmart's got some good stuff.
I'm a Walmart pickup girly. To pay for delivery unless I really need it, but I will go pick it up. So it's just so convenient.
So I digress. I got on the Walmart train. I think that we also maybe didn't mention this at the top of the episode, but you grew up in Ukraine. You are Ukrainian. And so obviously that has had a very deep impact on, you know, your life and your family. And I would love to hear what growing up was like for you. It sounds like you spent a lot of time with your grandparents. You spent a lot of time reading. You know, when did you start thinking about what you wanted to do later on in life?
Yeah, I will say my childhood in Ukraine is definitely, I attribute a lot of core Tatiana, like my personality, my attributes are very, you know, connected to Ukraine and like how I grew up in Ukraine. So a lot of the success I attribute, you know, to my upbringing. And yeah, just, I mean, I'm still Ukrainian through and through. So you can see that I try to attribute a lot of the pieces of culture or songs, or when I envision scenes, like there is usually some kind of element tied to Ukraine, whether it's through names. Again, like there is some scenes in Simple Truth, if you haven't gotten there, about the magical village or creator's village, like a lot of that. So it's still very prominent in day-to-day life for me. I grew up in Kiev, which is the capital, which was a great place. Love Kiev, still best city in the world. We grew up in I would say a farm and in suburbs of Kiev. So we had our house, we had a lot of animals. We had, you know, chickens, ducks, pigs, rabbits. Just as any typical farm, there was a lot of chores and responsibilities that you had as a kid. That's kind of been, I would say, majority of my childhood. My parents valued education a lot. So even though we grew up somewhat poor, there was moments of prosperity. There was moments where, you know, my dad didn't have a job for a year. So for majority of my childhood, it was more so, hey, like, I would rather die than be poor. And that's stayed true through my entire life. Like I said, my grandparents raised me on a lot of occasions. I'm second oldest out of 8. But as a second oldest daughter, second oldest child, I definitely got to participate in a lot of parenting, a lot of raising, a lot of household running. A lot of my practical skills definitely got formed very early on. In the summers, my parents would usually send me off to a village with grandpa and grandma, And, there it's a very typical Ukrainian village where it's just like there was no internet. There was barely any electricity. We had like a camping gas thing, outdoor plumbing, not even that. We had our well that you had to, do it manual style and pull a bucket of water. You get to just run around and take care of the farm and work on the fields and, weed all day long, and then come in and have your downtime with some grandmas, local village grandmas. I actually use the name for my publishing company because, again, a lot of the formative experiences of my childhood were in that village, and it's called Bakumovka. And so a lot of my creativity got formed during those years where you literally were just like, well, you work on the fields and now you got to figure out how to entertain yourself. So
that's incredible and so different than what so many people experience here in the States as well. Now, what got you thinking that you were going to come to the States?
Growing up in Kiev and not being able to afford things and being able to go through some of the humbling experiences. My parents were always big proponents of education. And that's, however complex my relationship with my parents are, I will be forever grateful for, them pushing me towards like, hey, you're going to have to study because there's not a backup plan coming to save you, So, and that was very much ingrained in me growing up. So English was part of that. For me, it's just kind of like clicked that like, hey, if I want more from this life, like I really got to put in the effort. Like there is no one to come save me. There's no one I can rely on. Like I got to make it myself. And so I started, picking up languages and putting in, like, my parents never had to ask me if I did my homework. Or, like there was a level of drive that I was just naturally. And so I picked up English. And at one point, we've met with a family that was from Utah. And they had a kid their age. And so being 8 years old, speaking the very bare minimum, I actually became friends with their daughter. And so our families grew closer through the years as they had kids, our kids' age. And, they were kind of all alone in Ukraine with no friends. They actually, when my oldest sister, who was 5 years older than me, was graduating high school, she actually got accepted to a university to be a translator and like to study English. And they offered her to come study in the United States. Mm-hmm. So that was a very much of like up until them offering that, like that was never an option because if you can imagine, like it costs a lot of money to come study, especially as an international student. There's a lot of expenses that like people don't typically know, even in visas, even in like not being able to work as an international student. So there is a lot of upfront cost. That family honestly was the miracle, for our family that they offered my sister to come and actually study in Snow College up here in Utah. When the opportunity presented, they offered to pay for my schooling for 1 year. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to come to America, like I'm going to study business. It's very hard for me to decide like what is it that I want because I am passionate about a lot of things. At one point, like I was genuinely just didn't know because I could see path from like all these structures. And so I was like, what, but one thing I can tell you right now is regardless of what path you take, like I want to know how to manage money. I want to know how to invest money. Like I want to have that financial backing, regardless of whatever career or profession or business I would start. And so that kind of flown into, I want to study business, I want to study finance. And that's what I did. I got accounting certificate. I finished my business associates. I transferred to UVU to study finance, and still 10 out of 10. Like that is something that helped me tremendously through my life. I still recommend to whenever you're unsure, business and understanding how money works is a great path.
It's almost less common to meet someone who doesn't have a lot of different passions rather than, someone who like has just known what they want to do forever. And so it's cool to see how you've been able to build all of those passions into your life now. But sometimes you just have to start with one thing and going down one path. And it sounds like business and studying finance was absolutely a helpful path for you because you were able to then use it to kind of go in some different areas. So after initially working in finance, and I know that at some point you transitioned into the tech world, what did that change look like?
Sales is not something that people proactively think. I was like, oh, I want to go to sales after high school. Like especially in Utah, there's all these sales bros, So originally after I started finance and like got into Fidelity Investment, and then I slowly transitioned into like real estate and lending. So from there, like I managed a branch, and then I was a realtor for a while, and then I worked for an escrow company. So it's like I kind of took that finance background and it molded into more of a lending, real estate. But all through even starting Fidelity Investments, like I got promoted into our high net worth group, and that had like an upsell quota of like, hey, let's get financially professionally managed portfolios. And I really enjoyed that aspect. Like I've always hit my quota. And then I started seeing those bonus checks come in of like, oh, this is actually really nice. The commissions aspect of always been a big perk of, sales or upsales or kind of expansion opportunities. Same thing, with real estate. And then my husband actually has been in sales for a while as well. So we're both in the sales world, but he has been doing it for a little longer. And so seeing his sales career, I'm like, that's kind of what I'm already doing. At one point, I transitioned into tech for the growth. Tech is famous for, a lot of opportunity in that, versus like finance and real estate can get a little bit more stagnant and a little bit more tied down by whatever's happening in the market. So I was driven by one, the unlimited opportunity, and two, having a team environment where, as you're a realtor or as you work for, small 10, 15 people companies, your team is very limited. And so I transitioned from just real estate into being an SDR. So doing cold calling, picking up, and like at first, you just don't know how it's going to work out. And obviously a lot of that comes from just kind of taking that leap of faith of like, hey, I'm going to go sell software now. And it worked out. It was actually way better than I ever expected it to be. It requires a certain set of skills, as there is a lot of people, a lot of competitions, and I'm very competitive by nature. So I love that aspect. It's not the sales in the way we know. It's more so finding value and the right people at the right time. You're really selling something of value to fix their need and their problem. And so part of the sales is, how are you going to, understand that person? How are you going to find and understand their why, their need, and how would that fit into the product and show them and communicate? So it's kind of using your great communication skills and being able to, again, understand that person, have empathy for that person. So it shifts a lot more into problem solving. Obviously, I've had success with that and got promoted and been managing teams for a few years now. And so far, again, a great, great career to have. And the nice part about it is that something unique about sales is, again, the earning potential there is really tied to your performance and what you put into the work. A lot of people, even within the beginner SDR roles, can make six figures just starting out. And that, attracts a lot of great talent there. But especially women, it's such a male-dominated field. And I think women having that empathy and having that just natural understanding of other people and their pain points have been great examples of women in sales and tech and their success stories.
Now, you manage a team. Are a lot of those team members women, or is it mostly men?
It's mostly men. And you would be surprised how, even during the recruiting process, how loop-sided it is. There's just less women that apply, to be honest. And
yeah,
but it does require a certain level of grit. It does require a certain level of commitment. And the nice part about it is your background truly doesn't matter. It comes a lot more on your skill set and your willingness to persevere rejection, to deal with stress, to kind of push through and have that resilience. It's really such a unique place where it truly doesn't matter where you come from. Yeah, it's fun to work with people that come from whatever backgrounds they are. Everyone brings in such a unique perspective. In a lot of professions, you have to have that degree, that particular experience, continue working that and maybe make it there. Versus in sales, it's really your promotional path, your career opportunity there is directly tied to how you've been performing.
This is something that really anyone could pivot to if they wanted to. Like you said, you don't necessarily need a degree or a lot of hard skills. And sometimes those things come into play if you are working with a particular client that has whatever area of expertise, or if you're working for a particular company that has some sort of area of expertise. But it can be a lot of those soft skills. I put in quotes because I don't know if we should really call them soft skills because they are skills. But so many women do have those skills of understanding how to connect with people, empathize with people. I also would love to see more women going into sales and going into tech.
I'm like, it's getting better, but it's definitely still very much a male dominated field.
Now, I would love to know what's happening in like your average work day. Like, what time are you waking up? What does your morning look like? What does your work day look like? And then, what's happening after you're done?
I'll wake up at 6, then, get ready. I drive for an hour to office, so I have to commute for a little bit, which a lot of people might hate, which sometimes does get exhausting, not gonna lie, but that's the only time my brain gets a little bored, which I enjoy. You just get to listen to music and listen to, audiobooks and just kind of have a downtime. Usually I'm in by 8 o'clock. From there, my day-to-day, being a manager now, right, requires a lot more meetings. So a lot less cold calling, but now a lot more meetings. So usually I'll meet with my team, or I'll meet with my managerial team, or I'll work on some initiatives and projects. So the really cool part about working for a startup, it's a blessing and a curse, but there's a lot of ownership. And so you get to do a lot of fun of creative projects, but it's also a lot more, again, ownership to make sure you execute and make sure you deliver the quality results. So from there, right, like usually meetings until about 5 o'clock. And then from there, I drive home. With my kids being a little older now, there's all the sports. Usually, I'll get home by 6:30, depending on the day. And then, there's tumbling, there's jiu-jitsu. And then usually, again, depending on the day, we'll be home by 7:30. Dinner. Then I've usually either do like a 20-minute workout, or if we have time to go to the gym, like Mondays, we'll go to the gym as a family. From there, usually my husband and I rotate on who's putting kids to bed, who's cleaning out kitchen. Once they're in bed by like 10 o'clock, usually it's where me time begins, where I get to do a lot of my book stuff, a lot of my admin stuff. Usually from 10 up until midnight or 1 a.m. That's where I do my second job of Tatiana's stuff that I'm very passionate about. So, and usually from, 1 onward, some days 2, unfortunately, and sleep time, and then back up at 6. So I definitely have learned to, manage on a very little sleep most of the time, but that's the price you pay.
I also find, and that like in my life, at least, I have, again, seasons of times that I'll be really, really busy and locked in like that. And then there'll be another season like shortly after that, where it's just a little bit of a slower chapter and I'm able to find more time for sleep or whatever else. And you can't always plan for exactly when that is going to come. Hopefully you get some chapters where you're able to get a little more sleep too.
As a person, like I genuinely cannot think of the time I was ever bored. I like to think that like a lot of women deal with anxiety, and like I do have a high functioning anxiety, but to me, I'm like, monetize that, But genuinely, I'm like, I struggle sometimes with just shutting off my brain and falling asleep. And, that's a level of frustration that it's, causing a lot of stress sometimes for people. But I'm like, I can't sleep. Let me read. Let me write this. Let me, learn a new thing. Like right now I'm working on an app pilot for another business idea. And so it's just like, that's a blessing and a curse, but I'm like, having that brain that never shuts off, like you just have to channel that into something that, again, you enjoy. I enjoy being so busy where I'm like on the brink of insanity. I also want to make sure I work out. I also want to make sure, there's me time and my husband time and my kids time and my dog time and like my social life time. And so to me, it just becomes a lot more of multitasking and managing your time. I used to work out 5 days a week at the gym. That kind of became somewhat of a unrealistic methods for me as life got just more busy. And so nowadays it's more so like 2-3 times at the gym, but I like to work out every single day or be active, and that's my quality time with kids. Sometimes we just turn on YouTube workout and they're all working out with me. A lot of the challenges as a mom, right, is like, where do I fit in my kids into my work, into my businesses, into my, again, passion projects here and there. And a lot of it is just having them be part of it. When I had kids, with both of my kids, I went back to work at 6 weeks. And so I was blessed enough, especially with my second one, to be able to work from home for a while after I went back to work. Same thing, right? Like if I, doing dishes, or it's like my nighttime routine of like closing shift, at the kitchen, like I usually have something running in my mind about like how I'm going to plan it, or if it's a writing time, right? Like by the time I actually sit down to write, like mentally, I've already made the chapter. Now I just have to sit down and execute. There is very little time that gets truly wasted. Like, and again, to me, I enjoy that.
You are amazing.
There's high functioning anxiety of like, I can't relax to a degree, which is also not great. But like I found ways that are relaxing to me.
Well, it sounds like, you definitely have a very packed schedule. Does that change when you're in the middle of drafting a book? Or does the drafting just happen, after kids are asleep and that's kind of your time for that?
Because I self-publish, I kind of set my own deadlines, which is a perk.
Yep.
And which is partially why I'm never going to be traditionally published. Like that's just something I'm not, like I don't like putting a timestamp to my creativity. But usually it gets really busy once I'm in the editing stage, because at that point, like I've already taken all the drafting and now I have to actually clean up, produce. And there's 10 different stages of editing. And so this is a time where my husband will take on more of that, like cooking, taking care of kids, cleaning out the kitchen, more of the household management.
Yeah.
So I can focus more on my books. And then once usually it's out in the world, I take that week off. I don't do anything book related within that week.
Yeah.
And usually we try to go on like family vacation during that time, because I'm like, hey, got it done. Mommy's back in town. Let's go. And
that's a pretty good way to balance everything, I think. We should mention actually what books you've written. Would you mind giving us a quick overview of those?
I've been writing my entire life. So that's just kind of, it's a creative outlet that I've had since I was a kid. I was a very strong reader. I learned how to read early on, and fantasy kind of been my go-to. At one point, I was very obsessed with Harry Potter and anything fantasy. My grandpa used to have this big library, and there were a lot of classics like Charles Dickens and a lot of Ukrainian classics. And so I'm like, my punishment as a kid was to take away my books. So I was very nerdy growing up. And then, naturally from there, I started creating my own stories and writing. So like my first drafts of actual like novels, I was about 13 years old when I started writing like the full stories. And there's actually a few that I'm like, I should go back and like just publish it for kicks and giggles. Because what's interesting is at that point, I didn't know what romantasy, YA romantasy genre is. And yet like my stories fit into that. So that's been always my go-to genre. I'll tell you that, just a little bit of a angst and tension and, love triangles, especially as, moody teenager. That was my jam. Life proceeded. I still kind of used to write poems and just small little, couple of chapter stories. And then once I had kids, I actually published my very first publishing experience was with kids' books. So I wrote a poem for my kids, which is still one of my favorite things I've ever written. It's called The Parent's Gentle Hug and Kiss. And my sister illustrated that. And that was a very cool passion project. And then from there, I wrote another child's book. And this one was more dedicated to grandpa. So my grandpa is a big influence in my life. I kind of was raised by my grandparents for a lot of my childhood. And he was kind of the big supporter of my nerdiness obsession with reading. And so the second kids book is about like grandpa and kids adventures. And my kids have my father-in-law is a fantastic grandpa as well. So it's kind of a tribute to them both. Not to go dark from the get-go, but, the war in Ukraine kind of pushed me to realize that like I've always wanted to publish and like actually do it. And that was like, if not now, then you never know how life is going to work out. And so that was kind of the breaking point for me to just say, you know what, I'm just going to do it. So I just wanted to publish a thing for myself and for little Tatiana, who always dreamed to publish a book. And so from there, I started writing A Broken Promise, which is my very first book of adult fiction, romantasy. If you read it, kind of a not quite romantasy, at least for the first book. The whole series is, but it was very important for me to write that character journey for Finn and just her struggles and her wins. And, I know people, it's funny to me to see that like within that book in particular, right? Like there is Finn and there is Priya, who are my main characters in that very first book. And some people absolutely loathe Priya. There's two camps. There's people that absolutely love Priya or loathe her, like DNF because of Priya, When I was writing it, like it was very important for me to put that morally gray female character and like the development and the progression how like she is an anti-hero. And so I love writing strong women in my books. And so when I chose kind of the story and the motion of my trilogy, it was very important for me to put that at the forefront of the story of two best friends, with their dark past, with their histories, and not, again, morally somewhat black, some of them, but it's kind of putting that as a core of the story before the romance, and everything else. So
now, when you started writing your first adult novel, how did you do it? It sounded like you kind of had this passion that had always been there, that you were like, I've always wanted to write a book. Now is the time, I'm going to do it. Do you feel like you were kind of lost in that process, or was there anything that really helped guide you?
The biggest, like, there's a lot of creative people, there is a lot of talented people, there's a lot of passionate people, there's a lot of disciplined people, but like to me, the main key drivers is passion plus discipline is what makes things happen. Because it's like, you don't have to be talented, you don't have to be creative, but if you are passionate about something and if you have discipline, you're going to get things done, like you're going to create things. And so that's kind of been the main driver for me. On the days when things are not as, fun and exciting, the discipline kicks in, right? Like this is where it's like when passion dwindles, which, hopefully it comes back, but like when passion dwindles, discipline is there to pull it back. And so to me, again, like when I started writing, kind of shared the why of like, I wanted to finally do it for the little Tatiana, for my legacy, of like, hey, tomorrow I might die. The books are still going to be there. So there is a little bit of that drive that was behind it. And then, the story, like I was very passionate about writing strong women. I was very passionate about writing a book that I would want. I run it by Tatiana Filter one of like, hey, the harshest, critique of this manuscript is going to come from me. Whatever the 1-star people are like, this is the worst book ever. I'm like, you guys don't even know what I told myself when I wrote this. So I'm like, these 1 stars and like negative feedback, like doesn't faze me at all because I have a very strong, like, no BS filter on anything I do from myself.
Yeah.
So as I was starting to write and as I started to edit, like as long as the end of the day, like, is this something I would want to read? Is it something I would want to be proud of 10 years down the road? People will read my book and move on. They'll read 20 more. But like, I will know that this is my book and I will be the one who will have to live with it. Everything I write is still very character driven. So I'm much of just like a mood reader. I'm a mood writer. So you can see that sometimes in my novels, which is not probably a perfect way to write a book because it takes me, a year plus to publish a single story because of that. This is where it's like, hey, again, passion during drafting, discipline when it's time to edit and really push yourself. And so, again, that business knowledge kicks in for when I was learning about publishing. To me, it was, again, when I first wrote it, I wrote it for myself. I never actually expected to have people read it because for me, I was just like, this is what I want. I'm going to do it regardless whether people think it's a great book or a bad book because I'm proud of this book. I want to publish it for myself. And then turns out people actually did read it and they love it. So I'm like, that was a pleasant surprise.
You have thousands of reviews on Amazon, on Goodreads, on Book Talk. What was the promotion process for your book like? Or do you feel like, it was just kind of the zeitgeist at the time?
It definitely started with word of mouth because, like I said, when I published it, I was just kind of like, this is for me. If someone reads it, great. But, I shared it through people. And then I made a Facebook post about, hey, I published a book, cool accomplishment. First, I would say they're my OG fans, like 5 strangers that actually took a chance and read it on no reviews, no nothing on Goodreads, just unknown book. But I've shared that, hey, this is a book I wrote and they took a chance. And that kind of started as they started sharing it. And then, as I first got my non-family sales, I'm like, okay, and people were giving me positive feedback of this is actually a good story. And I was like, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. I like it, but are you just being nice? But as I made, first few sales, my very first goal when I published it, I was like, because it's on Kindle Unlimited, meaning the way authors get paid is just per page read. So even if people read 1 page, we get 0.004 cents per page. It's very, very minimal. You don't make a lot of money on Amazon, unfortunately. As it slowly started getting out there in the world, and I've just kind of been word of mouth advertising it. And I set a goal goal of like, I just want a penny a day. And so then, from that goal, again, very goal oriented here. So I'm like, okay, well, how am I going to make sure it's at least a penny a day?
Yeah.
There's a lot of resources on YouTube, on Google, on Facebook. This was before ChatGPT, like there is a lot of authors there with a great, fantastic advice. And so I started taking it more of like, this is a business versus this is a passion project. So how would I, again, sales background, how would I get more sales? And so a lot of that started from like understanding marketing strategy, understanding of what other people do it. And some things like, again, for me, it's still a passion project, but now it's scaled a lot more into somewhat of a publishing company. And so a lot of that, like I started dipping into, Instagram ads, Amazon ads, a lot of the online demand generation. For any book, there has to be a level of word of mouth because that's how people go and actually pick up the book. But those items definitely helped a lot to spread the word a little faster.
I think there's also this stigma of if you want to write a book and be an author, do it because you're passionate about it rather than doing it because you're expecting to make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Is that something you would agree with?
If you want to be an author to make money, that's not a career for you. And not necessarily because there's no money in that. There's plenty of authors that are self-published, especially that make, millions of dollars. It's everything that comes with it. That if you do not have passion about your story, about what you want out of this, like you're gonna quit before. It's not a fun experience, when there's people sliding into your DM trashing your story. It's not, when you find out that your books have been trained on AI with no permissions, no authority. When you find out there's been over 10,000 copies that got downloaded on pirated sites. Like there's a lot of things that happen when you find out like, oh, this one stole your cover. Like it's messy, Yeah. This is where like that passion comes in. It's like you have to know why you're doing. Because if you're doing it for money, again, go to sales. You'll make more money a lot faster with a lot more, balance and a lot less drama. So you kind of have to understand of like, hey, are you writing? Like, why are you writing? And then you can make a lot more money as an author. Like this has definitely came as a surprise to me. It's not an easy way to make money either. You have to spend a lot of time advertising. You have to have, just like any startup, you have to have some kind of seed capital to pay for editing, to pay for your book, to pay for a lot of the advertisement before they can even pay off. There's definitely a lot more potential that I ever thought would be within publishing career. The money is there if you're willing to make it, but that's how I feel about everything that you're passionate about. You can make money off anything.
Well, we've covered a lot today. I would just love to know if someone is considering, and this is kind of a two-part question, if someone is considering going into software sales, what would you tell them to get started? And also, someone's considering writing a book, what would you tell them?
Software sales is pretty straightforward. Have your LinkedIn, start reaching out to hiring managers. I would say if you've never done sales, look for business development or sales development roles. That's kind of the entry level into tech sales. Does require a lot of cold calling, does require to be able to push through rejection and make it there. But again, it's not as scary as it sounds. And there's a lot of opportunity there. So I would say land your first job, look for product fit for the companies that you work with. There's a lot of great startups. Make sure your LinkedIn is cleaned up. Make sure you have your why, because, part of the question is that I like to ask even in my current interviews is, why sales? So why not go into marketing? Why not go into, something more chill? Why sales in particular? And it doesn't matter if it's money, if it is like, you need to understand your why and be able to communicate that as you switch industries. For books, honestly, again, the hardest part is doing it. Like, it's just, there's not really a way to, you can study everything. You can be, take 50 English writing classes. You can, English is not even my native language. Like, it's something that you just have to start doing it. And the nice part about it is like your writing style will develop as you write. There is a lot of this like, oh, what about AI? What about this? And I'm like, I'm not worried about it because I'll tell you, like, there is a reason why I'm doing it. So
yeah.
Even if, AI is now writing books, like, and two is AI can't copy my passion and neither can someone else. They can steal my story. They can steal my ideas, but they cannot steal nor copy my passion. And that's what, honestly, again, why I'll probably be writing until the day I die. Like, you don't have to have fancy computer, fancy keyboard, understand, like, take 5 courses of writing, understand the, Save the Cat story. Like, you just have to start doing it. and have the story that you will want to read. The market will shift overnight, but you and your book will have to, exist together for a much longer time than the market trends are. Utilize the resources. A lot of resources available for authors. I'm a big proponent of independently published because, again, I like to have full control. If you can't tell, a little bit of a control freak. You make what you put into it. So 100% of money gets back to you versus your publisher and your agent and everything else. Now, not to say that there isn't perks to being traditionally published, but that's something that I've really enjoyed, having a career and being able to publish and, again, have a publishing company at this point.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface, but it's been so interesting to learn about your process and how you've been able to manage really like 3 big life components of day job, authorship, and, being a mom and a family member, because that's something that's tough to do, but it's also something that a lot of people really, really want to do and want to be part of their life. I'll be thinking a lot about passion and discipline. I like those 2 guiding values. So thank you. And yes, I think I mentioned this too, but I have started reading your books. I read a lot of like stuff that's all over the place, but romantasy is one genre that I haven't dipped into too much aside from ACOTAR. I did read Fourth Wing, and now I'm reading your series and I like it. And yeah, we can find you online.
My Instagram, which is also still not quite the author tag, but the Ukrainian girl is still the same as it was back in the day, because that's what I am at heart, as always, the Ukrainian girl. And if anyone wants to connect and add me on LinkedIn, like I said, I am hiring here in Lehigh, so reach out and always happy to chat.
There we go. We got LinkedIn for some software stuff, Amazon, and Instagram for books. So that sounds perfect. You can find us always at 100 Jobs Project on Instagram. I'll link everything from today on Instagram as well if you're looking for links. And then you can find us at the website, 100jobsproject.com. If you want to support the show, take a quick screenshot, share it on your Instagram story, leave a quick review. It just takes 1 second to tap 5 stars. I appreciate anyone who takes a second to do any of that. We'll be back here with a new episode next Wednesday. And in the meantime, Tatiana, I hope that you find success wherever life takes you. And I'll be looking forward to your next book coming out.
Awesome. Well, nice chatting with you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.